This is a really big day, probably bigger than you know, especially if you're a total policy and data nerd. Because P20 Win has been, I think fledgling is a good word. I mean, there have been a lot of people working hard, passing along the traditions, trying to keep it alive. The CSCU system did an incredible job holding it together. I know for many years, Jen Widnes was working super hard at sort of, I know when I was in the legislature, she would always remind me how important this is. There have been many, many people, but today it's sort of a watershed moment, bringing so many agencies into the fold as we look to realize Governor Lamont's mission of a government that works for everyone and that has less red tape and more reliance on data. Today's a super big day. I want to make sure that I thank, this is only happening because Scott Gall and Katie Breslin have been working really hard. I know connected with many of you individually to make today come to fruition. I said to them this morning, I didn't know that we'd get there, getting so many agencies signing on the memorandum of understanding, but we have. And so what could have taken 5 years, you got done in 7 months, I think. So we're really grateful for your leadership. We have a big agenda, so that'll end my public comments to say, woohoo, more to come. Next, I'm here to ask if there is anyone present from the public who has a comment before we do the roll call. Okay, seeing none. Katie, you're going to do the roll call? I just want to remind people to mute themselves if you're not talking.
Okay, so Commissioner Bai, I'm assuming you are here.
Here.
Commissioner Russell Tucker.
I am here.
Commissioner Westby.
Glad to be here.
Lloyd Blanchard.
I'm here.
Jen Widnes. I think she was here.
I'm here, sorry. Yep.
Dr. Gates.
I'm here.
Director Larson.
Present.
Michael Williams.
I'm here.
Kathy Brennan.
Good afternoon, I'm here.
On Klein.
Hi, everyone. I'm here.
Excellent. So we have 100% attendance.
See what I mean about being a big day? Look at that. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda, we're already to item 4, people. So next is, are there any members that have updates to share? I know we have 2 process updates from OPM, but if any other agencies have updates for P20 Win, let me know. Scott or Katie, are you going to share the OPM updates, and other people may think about theirs?
Scott's going to share slides.
Great.
And I'm going to deliver one of the updates. Here we go. So this is just a brief update to market for folks so that you know this occurred. So the last board meeting we had was in November, and for folks that attended it, there was a presentation from Boston Consulting and then one of the undersecretaries at OPM on the CREATES report, which is a report about government efficiency that was in the drafting point when we had the November meeting. The report was issued in March to Governor Lamont and focused on, it's hundreds of pages long, so it's a lengthy report, but we wanted to flag that P20 Win was cited sort of multiple times very positively in the report as a state effort that's, I think supporting the vision that Commissioner Bai described earlier in the meeting. So for those of you that have not read the very lengthy report, we pulled out a couple of quotes here that reference P20 Win, again, just so you know, sort of closing the loop of the discussion at the last meeting, and that was reflected positively in the report. And then go to the next for Katie. Katie, are you doing the data request calendar?
Yeah, I was on mute, of course. As you can see, we have a data request calendar where we're outlining what data requests that we anticipate will be coming in and at what point in the process they currently are. So we have 3 active data requests. Right now, the pre-K lottery outcomes data request is currently in the data sharing agreement drafting phase. One data request, which is a multi-year request that looks at post-secondary outcomes, is in the data collection phase with the participating agencies. And then another on college and career success, which is tied to our research agenda, is in the analytic phase. And so we're really looking forward to seeing more data requests come in. That is my update.
Thank you for those 2 updates. I just put in the chat because I realize we have new people here today, and I assume you know what P20 Win is because you're at the P20 Win meeting, but I know with the number of meetings that I go to that sometimes it's difficult. P20 Win stands for preschool to really age 20, trying to get good longitudinal data to help us as a state understand, are we on the right track with our policy decisions and with our program. So that is in the chat for you. And actually, Katie, your update on so any other updates from agencies?
Commissioner, I'll jump in.
Sure.
This is Charlene Russell Tucker, and awesome to be here. And as some of you know, that Ajit Gopalakrishnan is a integral part of this work, and unfortunately not here today for our meeting, but wanted to share for those of you who may not have seen it. I know our higher eds would have seen this, the report that was done, the P20 Win report, college enrollment, college attainment, and remediation of high school graduates. We do have that report, was shared with our state board, and that's a report that answers like 3 questions. It's enrollment, what percentage of our graduated class are enrolled, credit attainment, share that with you. And this is done annually, tracks post-secondary entrance remediation course participation, as I said, and credit attainment, to see if students who enter are on track. It helps us see at a large scale policy decisions, impact of policy decisions that have been made, across the systems. And so that is available. A few things that we've learned. The percentage of students participating in remedial coursework is declining for almost all our student subgroups. Though our high needs, Black, Hispanic, high needs groups show higher remediation course participation. I know that's probably not new news for the conversations that you've all had here. Black, African American, and Hispanic students are less likely to earn 24 credits when compared to their white counterparts. Females do better than males in enrollment and college attainment. And so not giving all bad news here as well, because we've seen some positive changes, but from the work that everyone's doing here, critically important for us to continue to be data informed as we go forward. So not taking a lot more time. And again, if it's not shared with you before, I can certainly make sure it's available to you.
Thank you very much, Charlene. Anybody else with an update? I know that Rachel, I think it could be worthwhile just to update about ECE Reporter, because that's a tool we're hoping to use to connect with SDE and follow young children in state-funded programs from the beginning. And there's been significant progress there.
Yes, so with the support of the preschool development grant, we've been in the process of revamping our data collection system for our state-funded early care and education programs. And it's been a challenge for the agency to have a complete data set that we can actually match with State Department of Education data down the road to track children and really understand the impact of preschool and in our early care and education programs. But we're really excited that after the launch of our project in January, soft launch back in 2020, we have a full and complete data set of our programs, which for us is a really big innovation and improvement. And we're excited to actually match legacy data as well and start to partner with State Department of Ed and other agencies through P20 Win to actually start tracking outcomes for our kiddos.
Thank you, Rachel. Rachel came on board to the Office of Early Childhood, and our data was a real mess, and we needed to do something and try to be able to actually track the children and look at the impact of early childhood. And thanks to the combination of her hard work to get a new system in place that is much simpler for programs to use. The programs are much happier with it, but also easier to link to DCF or home visiting or SDE. It gives us now the capacity to connect because the data is all in one place and in a way that's connectable. So thank you, Rachel, for all your work on that. And the other agencies will be hearing from us. We'll get this on the list. Okay, other updates. Okay, the last thing I'll just ask, on that data request calendar that's up, is there anybody that has items that maybe they didn't get to Katie or the P20 Win ahead of time that they need to add to that calendar? And if you're not thinking of it now, or you want to check back with your team, just let Katie know so we can keep this flowing. Okay. All right. Anything else on updates? Look at us, 3:13, and we're on to item 5. Oh, and we even have a document that shows that. Well, I'm going to go back to talking about what a big day this is. That's we have achievements from departments that have been part of P20 Win from the beginning, but then we're adding other agencies today, and we have a lot of leaders from those agencies, commissioners and leaders at CSCU who were here. So both the legacy a meeting last week with Judy Dowd, who said that she's been around these conversations for 20 to 30 years without a lot of progress. I think you can see that this is a lot of progress today. So just to let you know, the offices who are currently participating, the Office of Early Childhood, the State Department of Education, Department of Labor, University of Connecticut, the state colleges and universities, and the Connecticut Conference of Independent Colleges. So they have been partners in P20. And then we're going to introduce the new agencies. I just want to go over what the memorandum of understanding is that's being signed today. It's a process that establishes a governance structure and data sharing management processes and security measures that all participating agencies agree to, regardless of whether the data are identifiable or de-identified. The electronic MOU and its appendices have been reviewed at length. A lot of lawyers involved here, and OPM and the Office of the Attorney General. So I know what it takes to get contracts and MOUs and MOAs for one agency through this process. I cannot believe the determination it must have taken with all of these agencies. So I want to say the new agencies, we have Department of Children and Families. Mike, I believe you're on for DCF today, right? Mike Williams?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We're really grateful for your participation, Mike. Do you have anything you want to say about, I should have given the legacy people, but they have chance at past meetings to talk. Do you have anything to say about joining P20 Win, DCF's engagement here?
Well, first, thanks, Katie, for your constant engagement and making sure I stayed up to par about we're grateful for the opportunity to do this because, as you know, kids in foster care are some of the most vulnerable children academically by way of their achievement that we have in our society. And our ability to improve their academic achievement is based a lot on the data and the lack of or the inability to get it and integrate it into the work that we do with them. And so we're really excited about this opportunity to better improve on performance data, on all types of educational data that we can get for children in real time, as a parent should have, crossing over all the system barriers and having that to make sure we can meet our children's needs. So because of that, we're excited to be a part of this.
Thanks so much, Michael. I know how hard you work to make the wheels go round at DCF to make things like this happen. So we're grateful for your participation. And I talked to Commissioner Durantes about this. She's excited. And we've been collaborating a lot, and we see opportunities even on programs like the Early Childhood Consultation Project, where we both fund a program together, but the data has been separate, even though the kids are in the same program. So I think there are big opportunities there. So thank you so much. Next up, Tim Larson, I know you are generally shy and retiring, but do you want to speak for a moment about what it means to the Office of Higher Education to be engaged with the P20 win process?
Sure, Senator, and thank you for acknowledging our office. We're really excited about it. We think this provides a huge opportunity. The Office of Higher Ed has 4 or 5 disciplines that I believe can contribute a very aggressive amount of data. As I've explained to anyone who will listen to me, unfortunately, our IT system is 25 years old. Our newest server is 11. So provided we have the right technology and the right support, we're more than willing, provided that student data is protected. We're excited about it. I think it's the way to go. Happy to do it. And in legislative parlance, as only you could imagine, good bill ought to pass.
Yeah. And Tim, aren't you sad that you weren't in the Senate till 12:30 this morning, I should say?
Not really, because I was reorganizing my sock drawer and making sure my ice cube trays were full.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, Tim. There is indeed incredible data in your office about things like graduation rates, student loan default, all those things that can both help us know about institutions, but also help us know about where students are thriving and doing well. So great. Welcome, Office of Higher Ed. Next up is Department of Social Services, Kathy Brown. Welcome, Kathy. So glad you're here.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's nice to see you, and we are very excited to be here on behalf of DSS and Commissioner Gifford. This is really exciting. Like Judy Dowd, I've been with the Department of Social Services for 25 years, and it has been incredibly frustrating, the not being able to share data to help us truly inform the way we administer our programs and the services we provide to ensure that we're as possible with all of our partners. So this is an incredible opportunity. We've worked with both Katie and Scott in the Fatherhood Initiative. You're all very familiar with Peter Hadler and his work, and Scott's been very helpful. We're actually applying for, and I should have mentioned this, a grant through FNS that will help us develop a SNAP longitudinal database. And I think some of that information might be helpful to P20 Win and this initiative moving forward. So we couldn't be more excited. And again, kudos to all the work that's been done so far and to getting so many lawyers to agree to a single document. That is amazing. I can say that because I'm a lawyer too. So
yes, and Kathy, like Mike, you know what it is to move the wheels at a large agency. So thank you so much. The next is the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness, and Yvonne Klein is here. Welcome, Commissioner. Do I still say Commissioner? Can I still say Commissioner?
Well, thank you. That's a nicer name than others may call me these days, but thank you very much. No, I am here as the interim, and I know Linda Casey is also on from the department, and we were just going to give a brief update. Linda, I think you were going to take that on today. If not, I can.
Oh, well, I just wanted to, as the other agencies have expressed, we are as excited to be part of this organization and part of this data sharing coalition because of the benefit that our clients, we have families certainly who are experiencing homelessness, but all of our clients who are experiencing homelessness, and being able to partner with each of the agencies on this team to really help our clients when we do matches and we understand some of the benefits they may have or income that could really help us place our folks with the right services and in housing. So again, just to echo what everyone's already said, we are very excited to be part of this.
Great. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, and Linda is here with me as the organization is in the middle of their search for a permanent CEO. So Linda will be the conduit, certainly going forward. And yes, we're very excited. And for someone who spent time in state government, when you see things come to fruition, it is quite an accomplishment. So thank you.
You're welcome, Yvonne. Okay, so one of the things I'm noting is that, Connecticut Conference of Independent Colleges and Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness, they are not state agencies. They play such a key role in services in the state. So I would just ask, folks on the call, and we can, talk about it for a minute, but if you see agencies or organizations that are missing, I'm sitting here thinking, we've been doing some work with Beacon Health, who has a lot of data that can be shared. Write it in the chat and we will take note. And Katie and Scott and Rachel and I will have a conversation about, are there missing pieces here? Today is a huge step, so I don't mean to add work immediately, but I think there are some, when I think of DPH and WIC and other services, local health, there may be some connections there, so we can keep that in mind. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you all, let's just raise our hands as a sign that your agency agrees to sign the Enterprise Memorandum of Understanding, and then we'll have a conversation about a public signing, but let's see some hands up. I'll raise mine.
Commissioner, I don't know if you meant virtual or actual.
I did both.
I did both. Look at that. Look at all these hands up. This is as Kathy Brennan, who is a veteran, identified. This is a rare moment in state government to have this many agencies lined up. So I'm sorry to keep repeating myself, but it seems unreal to me. So that is great. So one question is, you can take your hands down. One question now is, we want to find a time to sign publicly, and just some, do you think it's a kind of thing that calls for the governor being there? I mean, I know from my work on the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan's work groups, that communication among state agencies is a major goal of that work with the MyCT work that's going on. Many of you were in that room last week talking about the governor's vision for a Connecticut that works for everyone. Do you think, I guess I'm going to start by just asking Scott, do you think, based on your conversations with the secretary, that this is the kind of thing where the governor would want to be at such a signing, or just something we could do with the commissioners?
I think it's a good question to ask. I think the governor's office has been very supportive of this expansion and probably the continued future expansion of P20 WIN. So I think it's certainly worth asking from my perspective.
Can I ask?
Others think. Kurt, yep.
John, yeah. I think it is without a doubt worthy of inviting the governor. The governor loves data, And I think this is a new way, in a well-needed way that, in terms of the progress P20 Win has already achieved and showing what can be done in the future. So I think it's as big of a deal as you've been talking about all along. And I just want to say briefly that we've already seen results. DOL has been with P20 Win from the outset with limited data and limited participation of other agencies and organizations, and it's been growing, and it's become much more refined in what we can do. One example is our WIOA data for our adult dislocated worker and youth clients. We recently matched our homeless data from our WIOA database with the homeless management information systems data. And, we did that with P21. And the results were way different than we thought they were going to be. The number of people that we service in terms of homelessness were not the total number that were being helped elsewhere as well. So there was a situation where we were not capturing all the data that we could have captured, which is a very serious thing. So we're just completely thrilled with this, and I think that in general, our agency by agency look at things has to be cross-matched. I think that we're not in general, not only DOL, but everyone else is not tracking barriers themselves as focuses of analysis between agencies and between organizations. And the example I just gave is a great example where we need to do better. So I'm just completely thrilled at this contract. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. DOL has been engaged from the beginning, and really appreciate those words. So I'd already mentioned about the governor's vision and my CT. I want to just ask Scott Gall to go over some current policies for system costs and the different funding sources.
Yeah, and I'll click through a few of the slides here just to get to this, because I think one of the things that we were hoping to discuss with the
There's somebody else. Michael Williams had his hand up, so I didn't know if you wanted, I don't know if you could see
there we
that.
are. Sorry.
Sure, Michael Williams. I had everyone have their hand up, which led to me missing you with your hand up.
No, I didn't take mine down. That's
Okay, sorry.
Thanks, Jen. That's okay. Scott, go ahead.
It took me a long time to figure out how to take my hand down too. So interesting. Let's see. So we were going to go through the in order to kind of sustain and continue and expand the work that's been done. We need resources to do that. So we're going to talk through just the current framework that this board sort of adopted a few years ago, and then some of the sources that folks are sort of looking at to support the core costs for P20 Win. So I'll go through these kind of quickly. There's a little more depth in the board policies, which I know are new for many of the people on the call. But this is based on the P20 Win cost sharing policy that was adopted in 2015, amended in 2018, with that sort of original set of agencies. And it attempts to separate sort of the in-kind contributions that the agencies are making, your staff time, your attendance at this meeting, things that are solely directed for your own agency, and then the things that are sort of shared system costs. And that's what's in the right-hand column here. So things that are, used by and benefit all the participating agencies. So this software that's used for data matching, the work that Department of Labor has been doing really since day one to conduct the data matches and hold the data, the work that CSU had been doing for several years, and that now I think OPM is taking on for the administration of the system, and then some of the work to actually carry out the analysis and to undertake the analytical process that goes with the data request. So those are things that are sort of shared system costs, and the policy that this board adopted, lays them out in this framework here. And I'll go through this as, again, sort of the status quo. And we also there's a fee policy for the data requests, which you can see sort of the nuts and bolts of here. So it asks data requests coming essentially from outside the participating agencies to pay a fee for the request. It has yielded, some income. It's about 24,000 for 3 requests over the past few years. So it's about 8,000 per request, which is helpful, not enough to sustain the system, but it's part of the existing policies. And so we just wanted people to know this is sort of the way the board historically has looked at the system costs between separating the in-kind and the shared costs, and then developing the fee structure for data requests when it's, not coming from one of the agencies that's part of the system. And it can be waived in other cases as well. So that's the status quo. The resources, so how we're looking at supporting the shared costs for the system is sort of laid out here. And so it's generally through a mix of different federal and private grant resources that we flagged here. And I think to what Deputy Commissioner Brennan had brought up earlier, we'll go through some of the examples where there's agency-specific funding that may help the system in some fashion. But just going through the costs here, we have the data matching softwares through the federal SLDS grant. The Department of Education was awarded a few years ago. We have staff time at both Department of Labor and OPM for the data matching and the administrative support to the system. The biggest sort of bucket here is the analytical support for the carrying out the request, being able to pull the insights from the system and having the support to do that for agency staff. And then there's some costs for, conference travel and some other items. So we were patching these together through, essentially a variety of agency budgets and federal and other private grant resources. And so that's sort of, how we're paying for the system now. But we want to make sure that the board sort of understands the status quo and can think about the future of the system so that, again, we can continue to sort of expand and do better work in the future. This is, again, kind of a list of some of the funding sources through primarily, well, it's again, a mix of state and or federal and private. No, this is state, federal, and private funding sources that have some component of data sharing in them. The one that's solely dedicated to P20 Win is the SLDS grant. Again, the CSD was awarded. That covers many of the system costs out through 2024. And then there's other sort of grants that have come to individual agencies. I know, as Deputy Commissioner Brennan said, that DSS is, for example, in the process of applying for funding for SNAP. There's an application from Department of Labor for workforce data quality. And then so each agency, has the ability to apply for funds, some of which is, supporting the work that their agency is doing for the system. So again, I wanted to lay out sort of the status quo for the way this board has looked at the system sustainability and resources historically, some of the resources that are on the table or that are being, looked at for the future, and then make sure that we, I think to what Commissioner Biden said a few minutes ago, that we're not missing anything that we ought to be looking for, and that we, believe that we have a path to have the resources available to sustain the work going forward. I'll just say sort of from our scan of, how other states around the country handle this, it is often the case that these types of systems are grant funded. And so, we're reliant on, pulling together different types of state, federal, private resources. So the situation that we're in, I think, is not unusual. It's fairly typical, but making sure this board understands that and then, can identify where we could seek future resources. That's sort of what we wanted to have on the table. Commissioner Bai, anything else you want me to cover in this other than going?
No, I just think that agencies that are present should look out for opportunities for data systems. There have been a number of federal opportunities. I know we've been engaged in looking at one. I think we're particularly lucky because our agency was designed to do cross-agency work and is a new agency. And so we tend to receive the funds when we apply them because it's in our mission. I think it's harder for other agencies, but as you see opportunities for data and data sharing and data linking, you can let us know, and we will work to, do combined applications from, this is the beauty of having all these agencies on P20 Win. I think we're in a much better position for some of the federal funds. Jen, did you have a question?
I mean, I was just curious about ARPA and, I was thinking, Charlene, about all the research that you might need to have done for, I know we're not using the term learning loss anymore, but learning loss. And I just wanted to also flag, which I should have done during the updates, that there is a research collaborative being put together, I think with ARPA funds or some sort of ESSER funds, higher ed working with the JEET to look at some of these research questions around what districts need to learn from what happened this year. So, just thinking out loud about, how P20 Win can support that work moving forward.
You know what,
Thank
Jen?
you.
Go ahead, Charlene.
I was just going to say, Jen, thanks for that. And you know how much Ajit is committed to P20 Win. So you can bet that anything that he's engaged in will be connected here as well. But you're exactly right. And I have more and more folks who are asking to join that. And so I keep sending them to Ajit as folks are knocking on our doors and said, we want to support research. I don't think Yale is yet there, but I just got to reach out from them. So I'm sending all of them to Ajit, that he can help to coordinate, and I'm sure we'll be connected back here as well.
Great. Do you know what I'm thinking, Jen, as you say that, and Scott and Katie? I think we should actually convene a work group of P20 Win about this because, for example, our agency has funding for evaluation allowable within our ARPA funding, and Rachel and I have had preliminary conversations about it, but I think all the agencies are concerned about this. And so maybe we just call together, just like a working meeting, maybe a working lunch where we sort of identify the different programs within P20 Win that are funded by ARP, by the American Rescue Plan. And because I think there could be some shared information versus every agency going off and doing its own evaluation to try to figure out, are there some longitudinal questions we should be asking and setting those up from the beginning, like, Kurt, some of the workforce board work that's being done, it's tens of millions of dollars. Like, how are those families doing? How are those children doing? I don't know that we'll be able to do a comprehensive study of that, but I think we should at least talk about it. So does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, Beth. I think we should pursue that because there's a lot of programs out there that are not interlaced.
And to piggyback off that, Beth, the working group that Ajit started, it came out of this higher education working group that launched College Core as well. And so, like Charlene indicated, there's a lot of interest from higher ed to help here. And so to the extent that Ajit has sort of like a crew of researchers sort of engaged, looking to be helpful, I think it would be a great opportunity to tap into that enthusiasm. If this lunch meeting or working group could think about, like, what are the questions being asked, we might be able to piggyback off the research collaborative to do some of the work.
That's right. That's right. All right. So I'm happy to work on that gathering. And I think UConn and the CSCU system have a place at that system, both on both ends, both as participants in some way, but also to help us think through. Does that make sense to Jane and Lloyd?
It does make sense, and we're very excited about the expanded data sharing information. But what I didn't do was raise my hand to say that we were going to sign with the current, as it stands, enterprise agreement. And that's because we have a lot of people working very hard with your group and with Scott. There are a few concerns about our compliance with FERPA under the current enterprise agreement. So we definitely, I can strongly say that the intent is to sign, because we've signed every MOU with the P20 Win. But we do want to address a few areas that have not been added to the agreement that impact directly higher education for us. But other than that, I'm just very enthusiastic. I'm public policy area myself. I come from that and in empirical schools. So I'm very, very happy, and we will work toward getting where we need to go, Beth.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Commissioner Bai, this is Lloyd Blanchard from Yukon, and I can say that we are also enthusiastic about signing the data sharing agreements and all that come with it, because we find a great deal of value in the data that will be provided, not only for public policy purposes. Dr. Gates, I share with you the public policy background. So we are very excited about the potential for expanding or improving our policies that help Connecticut children. Certainly, but also we have scholars that are interested in this area. Scholars that do a lot of work with EGID in USD or in the School Department of Education. So they also are very interested, and they've asked me to communicate that to you, that they're interested in working with these data so that they can do good work on your behalf and on the state's behalf. So we plan on signing the agreements, and we look forward to the great work that comes from it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And your agencies have been a really critical part of this work and hung in there with us for the duration. So it must be nice for you to watch the progress. Awesome. Okay. So are there any other comments about the resources and how, you know, there are certain costs to data sharing, but there's also, as you see opportunities for funding, please let us know. The next thing I just wanted to, the last item is the Resident Advisory Board. The idea here is for the P20 WIN to have a board of people who actually are the ones who will be included in this data system, if you will. So residents who were recipients of services, so that we're sure that we're looking at all sides of the equation as we look at questions and look at sharing data. And we just want to make sure that we have a population of folks who might have questions about how the data is being used that are very fair questions that will make us better. And also make sure there's, you know, equity in what we're doing. You know, we're not doing this to people, we're doing this with people. And so we need to make sure that some of the folks impacted have a seat at the board. It's the idea is that this resident advisory board would give guidance to this executive board on how to engage with the community and also increase the public trust in data sharing, period. There are a lot of concerns out there. There's a lot of bad actors out there, so you can understand why people are concerned. And then also, hold on one sec. I'm sorry, I have to take this call. I'm just going to ask Scott if you can finish this part.
Yes, yeah, I will take over briefly here. Although this, I think we're hoping to hear from some of the other agencies on the group here to talk about sort of the work that they're already doing, because there's in the draft agreements, what folks have seen, you know, is the focus on making sure that, again, as Commissioner Bai said, the voices of the people whose data we're collecting and using are, you know, brought to the system. And that's work that is, you know, already being done and to some extent through a lot of the agencies that are here. And so we wanted to, I think, kick off a discussion about how to do this. There isn't, you know, a fully fleshed out plan in the agreements. And so we need to develop a plan, but starting with recognizing, again, what's already being done in no small part by the agencies that are part of the system. And I think to a large extent, a lot of the new agencies as well. So we had DCF is doing work on this, DSS is doing work on this, CSD has had, I think, a long-term sort of focus on it, and OEC again is really a leader in a lot of this. So we wanted to make sure that the folks, particularly, you know, the mix of sort of old and new agencies had a chance to sort of discuss what's already being done, so we can learn some lessons from that and then use that to develop a plan for how to put something like this in place that, you know, does not reinvent the wheel and builds off the knowledge that's within this board.
Thank you, Scott. Sorry about that, people. Anyway, comments and questions about a resident advisory board. and maybe ideas about a process for setting one up that, as Scott said, isn't duplicative.
I'd just like to add there are two that may be potential partners with you in this community engagement. We have two organizations within the homeless sector that work to make sure that people with lived experience are part of the process. The first one is, and they're just forming. They're called CLIP, and that stands for Consumer Leadership Involvement Project, and they're really looking to increase the quality and quantity of the meaningful engagement of people with lived experience. And the second group that we have is the Race Equity Network, CT-REN, REN, and they're really focused on, again, the race equity piece of addressing housing and homelessness. So those are two organizations that are currently we are working with in our sector that may be of interest in this group as well.
That's great. Again, in terms of not reinventing the wheel, both of those groups sound like they could be good informants of this work. Thank you. Any other ideas or thoughts here?
So Beth, I can just share, listed on the slide here is the Commissioners Roundtable for Family and Community Engagement in Education. And this was the roundtable that we started back in 2016, recognizing the need to have authentic parent and community voice in our space when we talk about our education initiative and outcomes that we're trying to improve, and recognizing at the time that we were able to get, whenever we needed feedback, we were able to get that from groups of superintendents or administrators or even the business, CBIA business partners. And somebody had worked very hard on parental voice and engagement. It was, where is this group that we could immediately go to and be informed and hear from, not to tell them what we're doing, but to hear from them to inform what we're trying to do. And so we went through a process of constructing and standing up the Commissioners Roundtable. And this is a group of folks where we were having racial, cultural, ethnic, linguistic diversity, and also geographic. We wanted to make sure the entire state was represented. Something that was a little different than we did. There's, you know how you have the normal actors that whenever you set these up, they're the first at the table and they're in. We wanted to make sure we get diverse voices. And so what we did was ask those regular actors to nominate others to represent their group. And so what resulted was really a diverse group of partners. We had a meeting today for an hour virtually, and I tell you, they'll tell you the truth. They will speak their truth. Not what they want you to hear, but what you need to hear. And they continue to inform the work of the agency, and they're a value to us. One big work that we did together was a partnership with us with OEC, and the founders were there. So the Early Childhood Funder Collaborative was there as well. And we joined with parents, educators, and communities to co-create a common definition and framework and guiding principles for advancing state and local family engagement efforts across the state. And it was over a year effort, but now something that we're really proud of, that we have a definition that was co-created and what we use to do the work that we're doing in family engagement, not just in education, but across sector. And we continue to work on that. So that's one construct that may be very helpful. Certainly the group is there for us to engage even around this work. But if you were putting together an advisory group, that's a way to think about how to make sure you have very diverse voices and perspective and voices that you normally would not hear from. And it is extremely valuable to the work.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. That has been great work by all accounts. So I'm glad it's noted there, and there may be others. We know this is not totally inclusive. Are there staff at your agencies who can help us work on developing a model for this? Is that a good way to go for folks who are here? If we sent out an email and said, if you have a staff member that maybe could commit an hour to some pre-read and then an hour meeting. Scott and Katie, does that sound like enough time? I just want to make sure the commitment we're asking for here of commissioners and other leaders.
I think that sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Maybe a couple hours, but
couple hours. Okay, so we'll say a 3-hour commitment altogether. How's that sound? So then you've got the pre-read and then a couple of hours. So maybe it'll be a first meeting and then in coming back a second meeting, or we'll think about it. But if you don't mind, you can either put the name of a staff person in the chat or you can email. Katie, is it okay if they email you?
Yeah, definitely.
So katie.breslin are you at ct.gov or uconn.edu?
ct.gov.
ct.gov. Okay, great. Anything else on the Resident Advisory Board?
I think it's a great idea. Just so you know, we at DOL have on our Employment Security Advisory Board a designated person from legal services who represents claimants. And that person actually has a vote on the Employment Security Advisory Board, which I believe has been very, very effective in getting claimants' interests addressed, at least at the board and with a vote. I know what you're talking about is even a step beyond that, with a multitude of folks from different areas, which I think is wonderful. And as long as it's given deference by the larger board and a lot of credence, then I think it will be successful.
Great. Awesome. Okay, before we adjourn, are there any other comments or questions for the good of the order? Scott or Katie, is there anything I missed?
Did you want to have a report out on the Resident Advisory Board at a future board meeting? So that
Sure.
we have a deadline for.
Yeah, well, we can give an update at the August meeting, maybe. How's that sound?
August.
It's reasonable. Yeah.
Right. When is the next meeting, Scott and Katie?
We'll look.
Okay, we'll schedule that. Well, I really, really appreciate everybody's time. We do want to keep these meetings tight. And we will let folks know about a signing. I'll reach out to the Office of the Governor about their interest in a public signing and how they want that to go. And I do think it would make sense to have the Resident Advisory Board sort of formulated as part of it too, because I think that does show the thoughtfulness of the group, but we will get on that. And please send Katie someone who can work on the Resident Advisory Board. And the next meeting is August 17th at 2. So we'll bring an update then. And this will all be signed by then. That's our goal, to be signed by August, by late August. So all right, everybody, have a great afternoon. And thank you so much for your participation in this growing enterprise.
Thank you, Beth.
Bye.
Thank you. Great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, bye.